All right, welcome back. Monday night, exciting times. I am going to put this on the record. It will date this video if you watch it later, but go Astros, World Series champs again. Yeah, so we're going to say awesome to the Astros for doing that. That being said, that's about, yay. I'm excited, but that's about as much as I can do because, we got the election coming up. That's going to be a big midterm election. We've got super high inflation. We've got high gas prices. We've got shipping delays coming back around. I heard coming back. So we got all sorts of things going on in the world. So we're not going to focus on. We're going to celebrate the Astros win, but we're also going to focus on the Word because that's the thing that's going to last. All this stuff will pass, right? At the end of the day, all this is going to pass. I'm glad everybody's here. We got Brad with us tonight. Not me, the other Brad. And Brandy joined us again, which is so glad to have you here. So we are in 1 Samuel 13. If you'll remember, I'll do a quick 20-second recap. If you'll remember, Samuel was born, and he was dedicated to the Lord, and he became the high priest, and he was the priest and judge of the nation. And then his sons weren't quite as good as him. They were kind of going on to that, kind of perverting their position of authority as workers and priests in the church or in the temple. Actually, not in the temple; it was in the tabernacle at the time. And so the people, the nation, was basically saying, we don't want to go through this whole thing again. Remember Eli and Hophni and Phinehas and all that situation? We just, you know what? Instead, get us a king. Get us somebody who we can stand behind and we can just celebrate them and their victories, and they can lead us and they can be their judge, and they can be that person can be the one who's making the decisions for us as a nation. So we are asking for a king. And Samuel, remember, got really upset and was like, God, they're trying to take away your role as our leader, as our, divine influencer and person that is responsible for us. And he goes, no. Samuel, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. Just the same as they did when we crossed the Red Sea. And I saved them from Egypt, from the Egyptian army, and then they whined about water. And I gave them water, and then they whined about being hungry. So I gave them manna and quail, and then they whined about having manna and quail every day. It's not you. It's the people, okay?
They were having quail as well?
Yeah, manna and quail.
And quail?
Yes.
I thought it was just manna. They
No,
quail?
yes.
Quail is so good.
It's still, you would think.
Bread and quail? Ooh, I could live off quail for a little while.
All right, so then he gets Saul gets anointed as king, and it was kind of like, how this week coming up, tomorrow we've got election, and we'll find out who got voted in, but they won't actually take their role in the government until next year. Okay, so he got anointed as king, and then there's this time where he kind of just hangs out. I'm your king, but not really doing anything. And then there was a town that got surrounded, and the guy said, not only do I want to make you my servants, but I'm gonna poke out all of your right eyes.
Wow.
And they said, well, who can help us? Send out messengers, and let's see who can help us. They weren't even saying, can Saul, the king, help us? They were just saying, can anybody help us? Anybody? Anybody want to come to our rescue? And Saul heard about it and was like, that's my people. There's no way I'm going to let this happen. So he goes and he kicks some butt, and they all celebrate, right? So that is effectively where we get to chapter 12. Chapter 12 is Samuel saying, by the way, and if you remember last time, if you go back and watch the video, I drew it. It says God with an arrow pointed down to the king, with an arrow pointed down to the people. Samuel said over and over and over in his dissertation in chapter 12, don't worship the king. Worship God. Listen to your king's earthly instructions, but worship God. And your king should worship God. You don't worship your king. He's not a replacement for me, for replacement for your God. That's what Samuel kept saying in chapter 12. So, we're going to chapter 13 now. And this puts us at almost the halfway mark of 1 Samuel. So this is where we see Samuel is stepping back. He's not he's not quite dead yet, but he is stepping back. He's old and gray. That's what it says in chapter 12. He's old and gray. And Saul is now going to be stepping forward. Okay, so here we go. 1 Samuel 13. Saul was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 42 years over Israel. By the way, 30 years old is an important age in the Hebrew tradition. That is the age when you become old enough and experienced enough to become a full-fledged rabbi.
That's why Jesus waited until
That's why Jesus waited until he was 30. So 30 was kind of the age that was like, okay, this person's had enough life experience. They could be a leader. Okay? So if it was any less, they wouldn't take him seriously. Okay? Or you could be older than that and be Bradford and still not be taken seriously. Yeah. Saul, chapter 13, verse 2. Saul chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel, and 2,000 of them were with Saul in Michmash and in the mountains of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan his son in Gibeah of Benjamin. So I've drawn a little map here for us to get an idea of what we're talking about. The Sea of Galilee, Jesus' ministry was up here around the Sea of Galilee. It's not really a sea. It's Lake Gennesaret or Lake Kinnereth, and it's up here. And then we have the Dead Sea down here. Jerusalem's kind of here. Bethlehem would be here. Qumran, which is the Essenes, which is the Dead Sea Scrolls, is up here in this area. So Bethel is kind of one of the holy mountains or holy hills. This is where Abram, when he came into the land a long time ago, he set up a place to worship God at that point. And so we see here Michmash and Gibeah and Bethel. So this whole area, kind of in the eastern part of the mountains, still up in the hills and mountains, but closer to the Jordan River than we've been. If you remember the previous story about the ark, remember the ark they brought it to the forefront to the battle, and then as like a token, like rabbit's foot, they're like, well, bring the ark up here, then we'll win the battle. And then they got their butts whipped, and they stole the ark, and then it went around to all these towns over here in the Philistines. Yeah, like it was used like a good luck charm, and it was going through all these towns over here in the western part of Israel in what we call the Philistine occupation zone. Okay, but now we're on this part of Israel. This is where we're talking now. Okay, so 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash over here, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah here, or Gibeah. Okay, so we've got 3,000 Israeli troops here. The rest of the people he sent each to his tent. So he sent everybody else home. Everybody go home, and you can go to the website. I'll add it on here just in case anybody has forgotten. But it's pretty simple. It's bradflack.com/1-Samuel. And that's going to take you to where all these videos are posted and all the maps and drawings and all the other stuff that I put on there, okay? So when you go here, you'll see the map of the breakdown of where the different tribes were given territory. And all the different territory that was given in Joshua. They talk about the different territorial boundaries. And it's pretty specific. Way more specific than you might consider it would be. Okay? So if you want to look at that, you can look at that in Joshua. Verse 3, Jonathan struck the garrison of the Philistines that was in Gibeah, and the Philistines heard of it. So there was apparently some Philistines. Listen, if the Philistines, I guess I'll kind of draw it like this. What color? I'll use this. So if the Philistines are basically kind of in this zone right here, I'm going to put a big P, sideways P, because that's the way I'm writing it. A big P for Philistines here. But we've got some Philistines over here in a garrison. What in the world's happening? I'm going to tell you what's happening. What was going on is they would, because it wasn't a unified, they didn't have a border wall, which is probably one of the things they should have considered doing. Put up a border wall made of steel, about 20 feet tall. Anybody?
Might help.
Okay, yeah. All right. But I was making, okay. All right, so they didn't have a border wall, and there wasn't enough people that wanted to go out of Jerusalem to make a human wall between here and Bethel. So just like if you've ever driven between here and Dallas, you're going to drive, and you're going to see people, cars, buildings, neighborhoods, et cetera, until you get to about to North Conroe. And then you start seeing woods, stretches of woods, and then you get Willis, and then stretches of woods, New Waverly, stretches of woods, Huntsville, right? Right? So you can see there it stretches out, and then there's just kind of nothingness there. Well, the Philistines would find some of those empty spots, and they would go send a group of about 50 soldiers, 20 to 50 soldiers, and they would set up like a little camp, and they would basically be monitoring the activity that was happening. Well, okay, there's a bunch of people moving from here to here. Oh, they've got 3,000 troops. They moved over there, and they would then send notice to Philistines to either aid in their defense or to find opportunities to exploit those opportunities, to exploit them, and then come in there and try to take some land. They were always being watched. Okay, so there's a garrison at Geba, right outside of there. And Jonathan struck it. He hit it with his force. How many did he have? He had 1,000 soldiers with him. So it wasn't like he had a 3-man SWAT team, SEAL Team 6 or something. Like he had 1,000 guys. So he struck the garrison of the Philistines in Geba, and the Philistines heard of it. And Saul blew the trumpet through all the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." So Daddy hears about it in Michmash, and he goes, "Yeah, my son just whipped the Philistines, man. That's awesome. Yeah." Now it was, 1,000 versus 50, but still, like, get them Philistines out of my territory. So he's like, doot, doot, doot. Everybody, my son just went out there and kicked some butt, right? So he's excited. All Israel heard that Saul had struck the garrison of the Philistines, and that Israel had become odious to the Philistines, and the people were called together after Saul to Gilgal. So wait a second here. How did the people react? They didn't say, "Yay, your son did so awesome." They said, "Saul, you did it, Saul. You did it." Okay? So Saul's taking credit, or allowing them to give him credit for it. All right? But the Philistines, they're not liking the fact that their outpost got struck. So verse 5, the Philistines gathered together to fight with Israel. 30,000 chariots. So now I'm going to start making some charts here, okay? So we've got the Israelites and we've got the Philistines, right? So we have 2,000 with Saul and 1,000 with Jonathan, right? And this is a P. Struggling with my P's today. The Philistines didn't like it, so they gathered together 30,000 chariots. And there's at least one person per chariot, because someone's got to drive the thing. A lot of times the chariots weren't by themselves, though. A lot of times you'd have somebody driving, and you'd have somebody else with a bow.
Or a runner, too.
Or a runner in front of it or beside it to protect somebody coming up from behind. So they normally weren't alone, but we're going to say 30,000 chariots. Just know that number could be up to 60,000 people, okay? And then 6,000 horsemen, so guys riding on horses with swords. 6,000 of those bad boys.
I'd say there's easily 2 people per chariot, probably easily.
I'm going to say,
I've never been on a chariot, but
yeah.
They got it from the Egyptians. So.
Right. And with people like the sand which is on the seashore in multitude. Right? So it says, I'm going to read that again. The Philistines gathered together to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen with people like the sand which is on the seashore in multitude. So if you can imagine, they took from their territory over here, and they said, we're not too keen on the fact that this Jonathan and his dad Saul, who's taking credit for this thing, went over there and attacked our garrison, went over there and attacked our outpost. So we're going to gather 36, conceivably up to 66,000 people if you want to double the people in the chariots. So conceivably up to 66,000 people versus the 3,000 now. That would feel like the seas multitude, the sand of the shore, okay? And they came up and camped in Michmash east of Beth Aven. So they came up through this. You see how I kind of drew the road there? There's kind of a valley that's easy for you to hike up. So they came up through here, they gathered up, and they came up through here, and they landed over here. Why would they go east? If you notice, it says they camped in Michmash east of Bethaven. Well, they camped east of this east of Bethaven, which is Bethel's here, but they camped here in Michmash. And what that did was that broke the supply line between Bethel and Jerusalem, which would have been the larger of the towns in that vicinity of Israel. So they have probably had a few people stretched in here on this road, and then they had blocked this road here. So they've effectively cut the majority of the population of Israel. They've cut it in half. All right. Somebody here? Oh, it could be.
No. Hey, buddy. What's up, Robbie?
Hey, Robbie. Come on in, man. We're in 1 Samuel 13. So they camped east of Bethaven. We're in 1 Samuel 13:6. When Israel's fighting men saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed, then the people hid themselves in caves and hollows among rocks and in cellars and cisterns. So these 3,000 guys basically said, oh no, this is not going to end well. So they found cracks in rocks. They found boulders they could kind of weasel underneath. They found caves. They found cellars, cisterns. Whatever they could, they hid themselves.
What's a cistern?
A cistern is a place where you would collect water. I just knew someone was going to ask that question. So a cistern is a place where you hollow out the rock like this, and you normally will have a small opening. Like this, they may have carved it like that, but they'll normally add it back so it has a small opening. And when it rains, the rain comes in here like this, and then it collects into this thing. It's an underground water cooler, or whatever. And when you're in a desert place like Israel, the Philistines, Israel and Philistines. So they're collecting rainwater, but these soldiers are scared of these 36,000 up to 66,000 soldiers. They're like pulling the lids off and jumping in and hiding in these things.
Must have been a lot of them then. A lot of cisterns, I mean.
Man, they're deep.
Yeah,
I was watching one
they're
the other
deep.
day, Hezekiah's tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Recently found. Man, there's a water cistern in there that still shows the water lines from 2,000 years ago. And this one was like 35 to 50 feet deep. It's deep. There's staircases that go down.
And
Easily hold 200 men.
Oh, yeah.
so without going to a whole nother rabbit trail, what they would do is they would go, I'm gonna do it as quick as I can. They would take like olives, for example, and they would put olives, and they wove these bags out of, like, you know what sisal twine is? That kind of rough, stringy looking twine that you can get on a roll. A lot of ladies use it for art projects, especially like fall time. And it's that and it's kind of like makes it an oversized burlap kind of bag. So you'd put the olives in this trough, and then either by pushing it or with a donkey or mule, you would pull the stone, and it would crush all the olives in that trough. And then they would collect them up, and they would stuff them into those burlap bags, basically is what they are. And then they would close the end, and then they would stack them up. And in the wall, they would cut a hole out, and they'd put, like, it looks like a telephone pole. And they'd put one of the telephone pole in here, and it would lay on top of the burlap sacks that are stacked up full of the crushed olives. And then they would start adding weights at the end. And what that was doing, it was slowly pushing it. It would then extract all the olive oil, the olive juice and the olive oil out of those olives. It would go down into a cistern like this, and then they would have another one next door to it right nearby that had water, and they would dump water from this one into here. And what would happen is, what happens when you put oil and water together? Oil floats. It's less dense.
Yeah.
And so when the oil then was able to reach the surface, they stopped putting water in there, and they scooped off the oil off the top. And that's how they got pressed olive oil. That's what the Gethsemane actually stands for, is the olive press. And so when Jesus was in the garden of the olive press, or on the Mount of Olives, the garden of the olive press, garden of Gethsemane, then he was being pressed under the weight of our sin at that time. And that's why he was expressing the life juice from his own body, the blood, is because he was under the weight of the sins of of all of us at that time when he was in the garden. He was saying, "Let that cup pass me," like we were talking about earlier. Let that cup. I don't. And his flesh side said, "I don't want this. Take the cup away, but your will be done." Right. So he was like, "I'm willing to do it if this has to happen, but it's got to be your will. It can't be my will to do this." All right. So that's what cisterns are about. It's probably a little bit more than cisterns you were concerned with, but all right. So we're in the verse 7. So they're hiding themselves in rocks, cellars, and cisterns, right? Some of the Hebrews went over Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. So some of them went down the hills, down the mountain, crossed over the river, and went to the other side to get away from the horde of Philistines. So you can either hide in place or you can go run. But as for Saul, he was still in Gilgal, and all the people followed him, trembling. He waited 7 days, according to the set time that Samuel had appointed, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal. Gilgal was where the tabernacle was set up at that time. There was a movable tent, remember the tabernacle? So they had moved it from Shiloh to Gilgal for whatever reason. They just had moved it. So Saul said, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. So, verse 9, 1 Samuel 13, verse 9, Saul said, "Bring here to me the burnt offering and the peace offerings." And then he offered the burnt offering. So he said, my spiritual guide, my prophet, the priest of our faith here on earth, he said he was going to be here. He's not here. Let's just do this thing anyway. Light it up. Let's have a sacrifice. Okay, so he kind of jumped the gun here, right? Doesn't matter why Samuel was late, but Saul is saying, I'm the king, and now I'm going to take the role as the kind of spiritual leader of the nation too, because I'm the king. So we're just going to get this thing done. I can't be waiting around. All right. So we get to verse 11. I'm sorry, verse 10. When he finished offering the burnt offering, Samuel came. It's one of those deals where he's got it lit up. He's like, "Man, God, thank you for this sacrifice." And oh, hey Samuel, you're here. I was just doing the thing. It was, Don't
you get it that Saul is lost without Samuel?
Oh yeah.
You just almost don't have a clue.
And Saul went out to meet him to greet him, and Samuel said, "What have you done?" Samuel understands that Saul has stepped into the role as the spiritual leader when he wasn't supposed to. And Saul said, "Because I saw that the people were all scattered from me, and that you didn't come to the appointed assembly." Remember, you told me you were going to come 7 days, and you weren't here. "And the Philistines are gathering themselves. We got 36 to 66,000 people over here at Michmash. Therefore, I made an executive decision, and I said," verse 12, "the Philistines will come down now upon me to Gilgal, and I have not yet appeased the face of the Lord. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering." Does this sound familiar? How many times do we say, "God, I really could use a breakthrough here. God, I could really use some extra money in my account. God, I really could use some peace at home. God, I could really use an extra bit of sanity this week because I'm going through whatever I'm going through." And then we're like, "Okay, well, that's enough waiting. So what I'm going to do now is we start doing this stuff." And God was like, I was literally about, "Where are you going? I'm trying to give it to you here. You asked for it. Why are you're taking it out of my hands again? You're not letting me do it. You're not letting me do it." Okay? So that's kind of what's happening. So verse 13, 1 Samuel 13, verse 13. Samuel said to Saul, "You've done foolishly. You've not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. Truly now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom will not continue. The Lord has sought for himself a man after his own heart, And the Lord has commanded him to be prince over his people, because you have not kept that which the Lord commanded you. Samuel arose and went up from Gilgal to Gibeah of Benjamin, and Saul numbered the people that were there present with him, about 600 men.
So that's why they say that David was a man after God's own heart.
There you go. Now we don't know that yet.
Well, this is where it starts, right?
But this is
So
right.
that's where it starts.
This is the first time it's mentioned. Is right there. And then how many people, when Samuel leaves after saying, "I know you're king right now, but you're not going to have a dynasty. Your son's not going to take over. Your reign's not going to be, the end all be all to reigning over Israel. It's actually going to be kind of tragic." And when Samuel leaves, how many people are left standing there with Saul? The end of verse 15 says 600 men. How many were with him? 2,000 to 3,000 people were with him at the beginning of this chapter. He's got 600 guys left.
That's not good odds.
And we've got the Philistines over here now, outnumbering them 100 to 1.
Yeah, easy,
100 Philistines for every one Israeli soldier. These are not good odds. It's not good. So let's go to verse 16. Now Saul and Jonathan his son, because everyone else is left. So Jonathan, you got to stay with me, son. Jonathan his son and the people that were with him were staying in Gibeah of Benjamin, but the Philistines encamped in Michmash. So now Saul has abandoned Michmash, and he's here in Gibeah with his son Jonathan and the 600 men plus his 100. So we'll call it 1,600. And the Philistines have now taken over Michmash. Okay. Then raiders came out of the camp of the Philistines in 3 companies. One company turned the way that leads to Ophrah, which is going to be up here. I didn't mark it on here, but on the website I have a battle map. Have you ever seen those? Like when you're looking at Civil War and it talks about they went this way in the battle line. The same kind of deal, and it's going to talk about this battle. I'll post it on here under this chapter, under chapter 13. So they went to Ophrah, to the land of Shual, and another company turned the way to Beth Horon, which is down here. And another company turned the way of the borders that looks to the valley of Zeboim toward the wilderness. Another one turned down this way. So kind of approaching the southwest side of Gibeah. Now there was no blacksmith found throughout all the land of Israel. We know what a blacksmith is, right?
The entire land? No.
They make weapons.
They make weapons. They make, tools and metal workers and whatever, but when it comes down to it, what we're talking about, there's no blacksmith. So we infer there's no swords. There's no blades. There's no spears. Okay? There was no blacksmith found throughout the land of Israel. Why? Keep reading. The Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make for themselves swords and spears. So all the children of Israel went down to the Philistines to sharpen every man his plow point, his axe, his adze, and his hoe. The sharpening charge was 2/3 of a shekel for plow points, axes, pitchforks, and adzes, and to fix an ox goad. So it came to pass on the day of battle that neither sword nor spear were found in the hand of any of the people who were with Saul and Jonathan, but they were found in the hand of Saul and Jonathan his son. And the garrison of the Philistines had marched out to the ravine of Michmash. So we now have 1,600, 600 left from this guy and 1,000 with his son. Let's assume they all stayed with Jonathan. So we got 1,600 versus up to 66,000. These guys don't have any swords, spears, hatchets. They've got just some farm implements.
Farming tools.
They got some farming tools. It'd be kind of hard to lift up and take a plow and throw it at somebody, Not well prepared to defend themselves. This, in my opinion, when I'm looking at, I'm not even a military guy, but from my opinion, I'm thinking if I'm Saul, if I'm the king, I'm supposed to be the Joint Chiefs Commander in Chief, all that kind of stuff, right? I am making a poor military decision to try to defend this location with my people and my lack of materials.
Sounds like Russia.
This needs to be a strategic retreat. We need to come immediately down to the river. when you get to the river, there's a pathway that has been used for thousands and thousands of years that will take you down to Jericho, and then you can march back into Jerusalem. Then you're in a fortified city. That would be the strategic retreat. But what do we see Saul and Jonathan? They have a sword. Saul has a sword. His son has a sword. Everyone else doesn't. So what happens? What happens? We're going to continue into chapter 14. 14 is very long. It's very long, so I'm going to kind of start it this week, and we'll finish it next week, okay? So, let me switch over to my notes. By the way, chapter 14 is the last chapter that I have notes. This book is going to be done. I have to open my other book. Isn't that cool? So that's exciting times. I have the other one.
Put that in your library.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to have it. No one else will be able to read it. They'll have to have me as the translator. You're like, what is?
When you send me your notes, I need to translate.
So let's go into chapter 14 here. A day came that Jonathan, the son of Saul, said to the young man that bore his armor, "Come and let us cross over to the Philistine garrison, which is on the other side." But he did not tell his father. So if you notice here, it says a day came that so they've been here for a while, right? You can kind of imagine it's been a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks has gone by, and one of these days, Jonathan is like, "I'm tired of twiddling my thumbs here. We got to do something to make this happen here. We got to figure out how we're going to get across this thing. We're way outnumbered, but they're just sitting here, and we're going to starve to death if something doesn't happen. Either we're going to starve to death, or they're going to stab us to death. So we got to do something, right?" So Jonathan says to his armor bearer, his right hand man, he says, "Come on, let's go over there and let's go see what's happening. But shh, we're not going to tell Dad." Now Saul, verse 2, Saul was staying on the outskirts of Gibeah under the pomegranate tree, which is in Migron, and the people that were with him were about 600 men. So of the 1,600, about 600 said, "Sure, I'll go over there with you, Jonathan. It's kind of a crazy suicide mission, but what the heck? Let's go do this thing. Tired of sitting around," right? Verse 3, and Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli. Remember, we talked about Eli, and he had his son Phinehas, and he was a bad guy, but he had a son named Ichabod. That was because I can't remember the exact translation of it. The mother said it was because of bad news, and so that was what Ichabod means, right? So Ichabod, is that what it is? I couldn't remember, but yeah. So it's not good. It's not good. It's not related in a good way. The priest of the Lord in Shiloh was wearing the ephod. So Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the priest of the Lord in Shiloh, was wearing the ephod, but the people did not know that Jordan had gone. So what we're seeing here is in Gilgal, which was going to be kind of in central area here, and then Shiloh, which is a little bit up here to the northeast of that, that we've got what appears to be competing places of worship. It appears to be competing places of worship because God, when He struck down Eli and his sons, He said they shouldn't be serving me. But here we've got Eli's great grandson now serving with a ephod. Remember, the ephod was the linen thing from the end of Exodus. We looked at that. So, had the stones and all that stuff. I don't know that this one had all the stones, but there was a kind of a linen robe, the white linen robe that they'd wear underneath the stones, and so apparently he's wearing that. So he's purporting himself to be the priest in Shiloh. So verse 4, between the passages by which Jonathan sought to go over to the Philistine garrison, there was a sharp rock on one side and a sharp rock on the other side. And the name of the one was Bozez, and the name of the other Sinah. The crag of the one rose north opposite Michmash, and the other one faced southward towards Geba. Jonathan said to the young man bearing his armor, "Come and let us cross over to the garrison of these uncircumcised." That was a Jewish way to really give it to him. Yeah. "Perhaps the Lord will work for us." So he's saying, I'm tired of standing still. Let's go figure out what's happening. Maybe God's going to do something. If not, I'm dead anyway. We're getting starved out over here. So let's just go see what happens. Perhaps the Lord will work for us. For the Lord is not limited to save by many or by few. So Jonathan's actually got some sense to him where he's saying, God's done all these amazing things. Why are we just sitting around? Let's go. Come on, God. So verse 7, his armor bearer said to him, do all that is in your heart. Turn yourself, and I will be with you according to your heart. So he's saying, if you want to go that way, let's go. If you want to turn and go back, then I'll go back with you. Whatever. I'm with you. Brothers to the end. Let's go do this thing. Okay? Verse 8, Jonathan said, now we will cross over to these men, and we will reveal ourselves to them. And if they say to us, now this is not reveal yourselves to them like what happened in Braveheart. Okay, we're talking about reveal yourselves to them like I'm coming out from behind the rocks. Because they have snuck up. Remember it said there's 2 sharp rocks that are there. So they've snuck up to this point. So they're saying, okay, we've been hiding, we've been quiet, we've been sneaking up. Now, when we reveal ourselves, there's either going to be a bunch of arrows flying, or we'll hear them, getting up and chairs scooting out from underneath them, and they're going to come running down this valley, this crag, to come down here and try to attack us. So he says, Jonathan said, now we will cross over to these men, and we will reveal ourselves to them. If they say to us, wait until we come to you, then we will stand still in our place, and we will not go to them. If they're like, hey, hold on, let's talk. Let's talk. We'll come to you. Let's talk. We'll wait. But if they say, come on up to us, then we will go up, for the Lord has delivered them into our hand. This will be a sign to us. Now, I don't know what Jonathan had for breakfast, but I'm going to guess it was probably a gigantic bowl of Wheaties. Because he's hatched this plan in his mind where he is saying, God's got our back.
We're going to go dominate.
Yeah, we're going to go dominate. And if we show ourselves and they're like, hey, we'll come down to you, then we'll just wait and then we'll kill them. But, and then.
With what, dude? With what?
I don't know. And then, but if they're like, come on up. Yeah, come on up here. Come talk to us at our place. Then once we're in, man, we're just going to take them all out.
Any weapons by this point?
No.
Nothing.
No, that was the point of saying the blacksmith thing right here at the end of 13.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, he's got some, yeah, he's drinking Red Bulls, man. He's got some wings. So, verse 11, the 2 of them revealed themselves to the garrison of the Philistines, and the Philistines said, look, the Hebrews are coming out of the caves where they've hidden themselves. And the men of the garrison answered Jonathan and his armor bearer and said, come on up, we'll teach you a little something. So I can see them kind of like, oh, got a couple of guys. Yeah, come on up. Look at these guys because they've been hiding in rocks. Yeah, y'all come on up here. Because they're thinking we got 66,000 versus 600, right? Just a couple of guys, whatever. So, verse 12. The men of the garrison said, come on up and we will teach you something. So Jonathan said to his armor bearer, come up after me, for the Lord has delivered them into the hand of Israel. So Jonathan's response to, come on up, let us teach you a little something, was, yes, we're totally won. Let's go take them. Again, he's got some Red Bull. He maybe has a little smelling salts in the morning. I don't know what he was doing, man. That guy is on the next level.
Faith, isn't it?
It's faith, right? Jonathan climbed up upon his hands and upon his feet with his armor bearer behind him, and they fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer was dealing death blows after him.
Wow. Death blows?
Yeah.
So everyone he hit was just like,
yes.
It's like Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
He was blowing death blows. So
dude.
everybody in the head was
So, no, let's go back again. Let's look again. It says here. So Jonathan said, come up after me, for the Lord has delivered them into the hand of Israel. Jonathan climbed up on his hands and upon his feet with his armor. So he's having to climb up to get in there. And he climbs in there. And remember, he's got a sword and his dad has a sword. So he's in there. He's jabbing him. And his armor bearer shows up. And they fell before Jonathan. And his armor bearer was dealing death blows after him. So he's up there with a club, a stick, a bat. I don't know what he's got.
deadly blows.
Deadly blows or something.
We continue right there. What I was about to say.
Yeah, and so verse 14, that first slaughter which Jonathan and his armor bearer made was about 20 men within about a half-acre field.
So just ran through 20 guys real quick.
Yeah.
Man, they must be some skilled
Dude.
Unless the other guy's on arm.
Because
I don't see that.
yeah, they had to have had it's an army. They had
So-
to have at least a knife, a big
They're
knife.
there to battle.
Yeah, they
It
had a big
it,
knife
it,
or
it, it evokes, you know what it evokes for me is watching like 300
something.
Yeah, but
When
Yeah.
they're just-
when they're just going through those guys.
Like that's they live that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, man, I don't know.
Fight.
Jonathan is really he's the stock report. Jonathan on the rise, right?
extra large Red Bull.
Yeah.
I don't know, 20 ounces. Yeah.
So let's go to verse 15. There was trembling in the camp, in the field, and among all the people. And the garrison and the raiders also trembled, and the ground quaked. It was the fear of God. All those guys that were there were like, oh man, how many of these Israelites, how many of these Jews are here? They just slaughtered a bunch of guys in the field. I see our soldiers laying down there. Uh-oh, we better get up and start moving. And so they start running. And it says they're moving and trembled, and the ground was quaking. Verse 16, the watchmen of Saul and Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and behold, the multitude melted away, and they went even here and there. So remember, they were on Gibeah, and there's a valley, and then Michmash is on the next hill. And so his watchmen are up there going like, some sort of skirmish over there. Some movement, what's happening? And then all of a sudden, the 66,000 guys are like, and he's like, boss, what's happening over here, right? So we see the watchmen of Saul and Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and behold, the multitude melted away, and they went even here and there, like they're just running everywhere, right? Then Saul said to the people that were with him, there was 1,600, and he's got 600 with him, so 1,000 people left. Saul said to the people that were with him, number now and see who has gone from us. And when they had numbered, Jonathan nor his armor bearer were there. So he was like, Jonathan, should have figured. And Saul said to Ahijah, bring here the ark of God, for the ark of God was at that time with the children of Israel. And it came to pass, while Saul talked to the priest, that the noise which was in the camp of the Philistines went on and increased. So they're having a full-on stampede over there. He's saying, Saul's over here saying, my son's gone. Okay, what's the next step? Like what we would do is we would say, wow, God is totally owning these Philistines. Send 1,000. Send them in there. Let's go. Let's do this thing. They're melting away. They're running. Let's take them. But instead, Saul goes, okay, next move. Bring me the ark. Bring me the ark. You're like, what? What are you doing? Chris is going to get everybody sick. Bring me the ark. And it came to pass while Saul talked to the priest that the noise which was in the camp of the Philistines went on and increased. So they're having a full-on panic attack across the way over here in Michmash. So Saul said to the priest, withdraw your hand. And Saul and all the people who were with him assembled, and they went to the battle. So the priest was basically going like, okay, I guess bring the ark. And so he heard that it was even more chaos going over there. He goes, hold on. You know what? Let's go to battle. Let's go to battle. So he had he didn't know what he was supposed to do. Remember, he tried to take the lead away from Samuel. We just heard that story in 13. And now he's like, okay, my son's not here. It means he went over there. What do I do? Do I go attack? Well, I'm supposed to put my faith in God that he's going to do. Bring the ark. No, it's too much. No. We're going to go fight. So Saul's making some real decisive choices here. No, he's unsure. He's unsure as to what he's doing. Saul and all the people who were with him assembled, and they went to the battle, and every man's sword was against his fellow. Every man's sword. Who has swords?
Was against his fellow. So they were fighting each other. So they got freaked out, scared, and skirmished, and started running each other over and started fighting.
Yes. So that there was very great confusion. Verse 21. Even the Hebrews who were with the Philistines the days before, who went up with them into camp from the country round about, even they also turned to be with the children of Israel that were with Saul and Jonathan. So there was apparently some who were like, I'm not even going to get involved in this. Look, I'll just be your servant. Just don't kill me and my family. Just let me. But even them have now turned. to be with the children of Israel that were with Saul and Jonathan. Verse 22, also all of Israel's fighting men who had hidden themselves in the mountains of Ephraim, all the guys who were hiding in the rocks and the cisterns, remember we talked about those? Heard that the Philistines fled, and even they followed hard after them in the battle. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle passed beyond Beth-aven. So the battle pushed further to the west, pushing the Philistines back into their territory. We're going to stop there for today. My exciting thing that I get out of this passage is that Saul jumped the gun spiritually. He took the role of what the spiritual guy in the equation should have been doing. Samuel then steps back and is like, all right, see what happens.
Remember, he did the same thing in chapter 9 when he started the sacrifice before Samuel showed up.
That's right.
So
Same thing.
Yes. So he just, he's so unsure. He's like awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Like socially awkward with not knowing.
And then in the middle of battle, like, my son's over there. Instead of saying, guys, mount up, we got to go get my boy. He's like,
not comfortable in his skin.
bring the ark. No, don't bring the ark. I guess let's go fight. Like, he was very wishy-washy, indecisive. He did have that decisive battle in chapter, 10 and 11, when they surrounded and they sent out for help. And then Saul got mad, and it said the Holy Spirit was giving him the righteous anger to go protect his people. But then after that, he hasn't been waiting for God to give him instruction. He's been doing and hoping that God's following along with what he's doing. So chapter 12 and 13 up to this point are pointing to me, and they're pointing to you. What is it that we're asking God to help us with? What are we asking God to do for us? And then we're not being patient to wait for him to do it. I've given this example before. My kids, I got 3 boys. If one of my sons asks me, "Hey, can you make me a peanut butter jelly sandwich, Dad?" Sure, no problem. Get the bread out. Dad, can I get a sandwich? I got the bread right here, man. Give me a second. Start putting the peanut butter on. Dad, where's my sandwich? I'm literally halfway done. Give me a second. Dad, I want my sandwich right now. I'm working on it. Here it is, right? But we do that to God. We pray that I want healing now. I want peace now. I want this situation to be resolved now. Yesterday. Before I even prayed for it, you should have already.
By the time I said amen, you should have had it.
Yeah.
Hey, man, it's a little late.
I know we talk about modern age and like we're the microwave generation where everything should be just food ready like this, et cetera. But here I see Saul, and he's acting like he's got a microwave. He's not ready to wait for God.
He never has been.
Never has been. So the question for you, and again, I'm not trying to ask for responses unless you want to share. But the question is, what are you praying for God to answer, but you're not being patient to do your part, to let him work that out in your life? And I'm looking at the mirror too. God wants to do things. I was talking with a good friend of mine the other day. My friend's name is Kevin. I was talking with Kevin, and we were talking about the sanctification process, becoming more and more Christ-like, kind of chiseling away. You know, if I had a stone here, and I'm chiseling away the rough corners and making it smoother and smoother until it's exactly the statue that I want, and it's beautiful. But it doesn't start out that way. And we just talked about, why does the sanctification process take so long?
It's lifetime.
And it takes a whole lifetime. But Kevin actually said this, and I thought it was genius. He's like, I don't know that our human bodies would be capable of being sanctified all at once like that.
Wow.
You know, I was talking about this.
Or our human earthbound minds could handle it. Yeah.
At the gym today, I was talking about the same thing, sanctification process. You know, as long as it's going like this, and not like the Dow Jones.
Yeah.
Up and down, up and down. As long as we're making progress and going up, even if it's a slight incline, that's how our sanctification process should
Yeah.
be. You know?
Yeah.
Not, you know.
Right.
So yeah, good timing on that.
Yeah. So, any other comments, questions, complaints?
It's good to see Robbie here.
Glad Robbie came. Thanks for coming, Brad. All right. See you next week.